Welcome everybody to the War and Peace Baseball Podcast. I'm here today with Alex Rudy. I'm Alex Uwe, and we get to watch some baseball again. We are back from the All-Star break, and we are back for the second half, the home stretch. You ready to talk some baseball? Got plenty to talk about today.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll get right into it. We'll talk about the weekend series right after the All-Star break here. For the most part, a lot of the same for the most part. The Dodgers and Nationals are winning, and that's all you need to know really there. But we'll talk about a few series in particular. One of them being the Braves and Diamondbacks, where the Braves swept the series, and I think the Braves are looking like a much better team than many people expected at this point. So I don't know if there's anything in particular that stands out about the Braves. Obviously, Freddie Freeman's sensational, and he's back for them. But what else about this team really just stands out to you right now?
It's really weird. It's I think the weirdest team in baseball. It's just that it's a bizarre collection of veterans and super young players that you just don't really see very often today. And even weirder, I think, is that the Braves acquired most of these veterans, in recent trades, like Matt Kemp and Phillips, and they signed R.A. Dickey. It's Nick Markakis, and then you have guys like Enciarte and Swanson, who they also got in rebuilding moves. So it's kind of a little bit strange. They're kind of built like an NBA team. You see a lot of NBA teams we'll get really young and then we'll get a bunch of veterans to guide these guys. But you don't really see that in baseball. Baseball teams are usually almost all young guys, or all guys in their primes, or mix of contending team with up and rising guys and signings to
I don't know why that is.
rosters.
That is kind of weird.
I love that this team is playing so well, though, because it's super. I just find it super entertaining. I mean, even without Bartolo, Freeman is just a monster. Tyler Flowers has been. I just love seeing guys like that just turn their careers around and just become, career age 30 or 31 is just always fun to see, really out of nowhere. And that division is just so boring this year that any excitement is nice. The National League, there's just a lot of terrible teams, so it's nice to see a team that was supposed to be terrible overperform.
I don't know if they're supposed to be terrible, but they have a legitimate shot at this wild card now, especially since the Diamondbacks and Rockies have a lot of question marks, and they looked really good this first half. We'll talk about them a little bit more later too. I do want to give a shout out to the Braves bullpen this year, which has been, I think, better than most people would have thought. They've got, Jim Johnson with not the prettiest ERA, but he's there closing games out. I don't know, he's not doing it in a very pretty way, but that's another guy that's just a veteran, who they're throwing out there. Aroldis Vizcaíno is having a very nice season. I think eventually he's
currently on the DL. I believe, but yeah.
So far this season has been putting up good numbers. I think, just the veteran type players they have really understand what they need to do at this point in the season, better than some other teams out there. I love Nick Markakis still at this point in the season, in his career even. He was always very underrated, especially on the Orioles. And, I think the veteran presence definitely has to do with them getting through this middle of the season stretch really strong.
Can we really just embrace, though, how strange this team is? Can I just name off some guys?
Yeah.
Just you tell me if I'll name a guy and you tell me if you really thought he was still in the league. I mean, you probably do because you know so much about baseball, but the average fan is oh, that guy. Danny Santana, so random. Kurt Suzuki. Rex Brothers. I mean, Eric O'Flaherty, Jason Mott, Jamie Garcia.
Jaime.
Plus the guys, Jaime, sorry. The guys I named earlier, like Dickey, Kemp, Phillips, Flowers. I mean, Matt Adams has been a great trade they made. Bargain bin, first baseman. I think. Do you think this team's gonna sell at the deadline, or do you think
No,
they're gonna try and make the
they're
playoff
not
push?
gonna sell because of the type of team they are. Even if things start looking a little worse, as long as they're in the wild card race, the kind of stage they are, they know they have a really strong, like rebuilding core anyway. Even though they've got all these veterans, I think they're gonna make that push, that kind of let's see what we can do type of push, and they definitely have a big enough baseball market to rally behind that. And maybe it'll make for a really good underdog story if they can somehow face the Nationals in a 5-game or 7-game series sometime in the postseason. They have a lot of work to do. Obviously, they got to do some leapfrogging, and there's just so many good teams in the National League. It's very top heavy, the way they are right now. Another team that is looking like they should have a strong second half, kind of a bounce back second half, would be the Cubs, who swept the Orioles out of the break. They played in American League Park, and they definitely had fun doing that. And they got to show off their shiny new toy on Sunday. Also, the Cubs traded for Jose Quintana of the White Sox all the way across town, and they sent 4 prospects back the other way. One of them, the marquee one, being Eloy Jimenez, who is, their top prospect right now. They're the kind of rookie sensation. He's really young, he's still in low A ball, but that dude has some mammoth power. We watched him play, actually, in the Futures game last year, and he hit a ball, off basically over the Metal Supply Co. building at Petco. I don't know if you remember that. Do you have any
How could I
thoughts on this
forget? It was
trade?
a fucking jack. I think it's actually just a good trade for both sides. Quintana, it seems like an overpay. I think if you just kind of look at it on paper, I think they give a pretty highly touted pitching prospect who's in rookie ball, as well, and the kind of 2 fillers. That's a lot of a pitcher who's not having a particularly good season so far. But I think you really have to put a lot of context into what Quintana really is, and what stage the Cubs are in, because the Cubs don't really have any time this season to concentrate more on prospects, and it is kind of unfortunate for them that they've really now finally just totally
Depleted.
emptied out what was
Yeah.
once, by far the best farm system in baseball. Is really nothing left, but that's inevitable. That just means you did a good job with your farm system. Your farm system just shouldn't be continuously, you know, continuously top forever. It's eventually going to get depleted. It's almost a bad sign if it's just year after year after year, year after year still top, because that just means you suck and just keep on drafting high and trading away guys for more top prospects. And Quintana is the pitcher I think that they needed. I know Sonny Gray, Archer, Verlander. I know I'm missing a trade deadline guy name that's been out there. Um, there's a lot of talented pitchers that could get dealt, but I really like Quintana. He's had 4 straight 200 inning seasons, never gets hurt. Um, just so reliable. He's having a down year, but honestly, that was just a terrible start that he had. He's been pretty solid the past month or so, and I think he was so underrated for so long. I don't think he is anymore, but I think they traded an okay amount, and he always pitched outstanding in his first start. Well, for the White Sox, now 4 top 30 prospects, like I said, I was telling you earlier for this podcast, all acquired through trades, and that's just a fantastic job that they've done rebuilding, trading Quintana, Eaton, and Sale now, all for excellent returns. This team is going to be insanely fucking good in 2 or 3 seasons. They have a ton of top 100 prospects. They have guys like Michael Kopech, Makata, obviously, and I'm really excited to see what that team will do in the
Yeah.
future. And they still have some trade pieces left. We'll see if any of those guys, there's some bullpen guys like David Robinson. Maybe a team will go after a guy like the Milkman or Todd Frazier if they think they need some veteran help, a contending team. So we'll see. We'll see. I think they'll still be active at the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. The White Sox are selling, no question there. Kind of circling back to the Cubs, who've really been the disappointing story of the first half. They showed off Quintana on Sunday. He struck out 11 through like seven or eight scoreless innings, and I think it speaks to the kind of haul they got in this trade, how thin the pitcher market really is. Some of the names you throw out there, Archer might not even be on the market. The Rays are, making a push. They're in second place in the East still.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think the Rays will always sell for the right price, though, regardless.
For the right price, but I think when you're winning, it's hard to make a move like that. And I think Verlander is getting up there. His WHIP is really high this year, like concerningly so. There's just not nearly as many options out there, and I think the Cubs are smart to say, look, here, we'll give you what we got, and we want to make sure we add to this rotation that's really been underperforming. And it's been doing that. It's been underperforming. They'll bounce back. Guys like John Lester and John Lackey will not finish the year with the numbers they have. I'm confident that they have enough in the tank to correct at least some of that. Just looking at this team as a whole, though, what is one key for the Cubs to have a strong bounce back in this second half, if you had to pick something to focus on here?
I just think everyone's underperforming. Honestly, just regress back to the mean. That's what I mean.
Well, I think the problem is that a lot of people have regressed back far below what the mean would be. Like
That's what I'm saying. It's also regress back to it's regress positively. Positive regression is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if they'll make the playoffs, honestly, at this point, because the wild card honestly seems impossible, considering just how well the Diamondbacks and Rockies played in the first half. And I think the Rockies do have collapse potential, considering they're relying on a rookie rotation that doesn't strike anyone out in Coors Field, and their offense has underratedly not been as good as you would expect. But the Cubs are 5 games under 500 or something. Maybe it's not that much, but 5 games out of the division, I think. They're 2 games over 500. The Rockies are 13. So the wild card, there's just it would be unbelievable. And then if you look at the division, there's the Brewers, who are 52 and 43. So it's a 3.5 game lead as of now. But the Brewers, I think I heard today, have one of the easiest records in baseball remaining. They can, if they want to, they can definitely get a lot better at the trade deadline. They have a tiny payroll, the lowest in the league, plenty of assets that they can trade. They have enough depth in their farm system that they can, make some win-now moves if they want to. And, I mean, literally almost every single player on this Cubs roster has had a down year this year. Do I think that that'll continue for the entire season? No, there's just no way that every single player underperforms that long. But at the same time, I mean, this could just be an unbelievably strange scenario where a team goes from the best in baseball to not a playoff team in only 1 year without any major injuries or roster changes. I've never really seen that in almost any sport, but
I think we kind of saw with the Red Sox. What was it? After they won in 2013, right? They missed. I think they missed out on the playoffs next year. Were
they clearly the best team in baseball though in 2012?
I don't know, but they dropped off. No. Like after they won the World Series in 13.
Oh, you're saying in 2014? Yeah.
They dropped off real quick. I'm not so worried about them completely dropping off. I think, the key for me is actually one of the, it might be really obvious, it might not for some people, but Chris Bryant has not been an MVP caliber player this year.
Not at all.
He's not having an awful season by any stretch, but he really needs to be the guy for them. He needs to be the one to kind of keep that team. I mean, they're staying afloat, but he needs to kind of be the driving force of that team, and he really hasn't been. He hasn't really emerged to be that. Especially how many home runs are flying out of the park right now. Chris Bryant has not been, part of that conversation really, and he needs to enter the conversation again. I think that's the key for them. So the Cubs and Braves are squaring off right now. That's kind of the reason I brought both of these teams up. And the Cubs just squeaked by with Game 1 of this series. I think Wade Davis stranded like runners on second and third with 2 outs when the Braves were chasing just one. But yeah, they held off the first game, and there's so much baseball to be played still. We're past the All-Star break, but I think it's important that keep that perspective, that big picture perspective on all these division races. All right, so let's shift gears. I mean, we've talked already a lot about it, but we'll talk more about the trade deadline specifically and what a lot of these teams will be doing leading up to this deadline. And I think the way we'll do this, we'll talk about the National League in this week's podcast, and we'll talk about the American League in next week's podcast. So right now we'll talk exclusively National League teams, and we'll kind of run through what they should be doing at the deadline and kind of where they stand right now, because there's a lot of teams on the fence. We'll start with a couple teams that really are not on the fence at all. The Nationals and the Dodgers are running away with it at this point, it seems. The Dodgers look like they're never going to lose another game. That's how hot they are right now. So both of these teams are teams that need to bolster their roster to make it World Series proof, basically. Like they basically have to make it so they get there regardless, and it's a really tricky thing to do. What are the first things that pop into your head when you think of either of these teams? What are some moves that look like they could work?
I mean, the Nationals already made the big. I think we're going to talk about it later, but we might as well just talk about now making that trade for Doolittle and Madson without giving up really anything noteworthy except for Blake Trinan, who I think that's fine if you had to trade him for those two guys. Doolittle still has like 3 more years of team control. He's not particularly old. He's a very experienced, great reliever who has had a couple not top years. He's definitely not his peak, but he's very good. I mean, he was like one of the best closers in baseball only 2 or 3 years ago. Madsen's been a great reclamation project, another cheap year after this. This was a move they had to make, and I'm very impressed with how good of a deal, honestly, they got. I was ranting to you about before the podcast about my utter disgust with the Athletics ownership and their obsession with trading relatively cheap guys in poor trades for even cheaper guys. But I'll save that and stick on topic and save a rant for another day.
All right.
I think they would be smart to go for another big relief pitcher if possible in the trade market. Maybe someone like Zach Britton if their deal is right. They have decent prospect depth still. It'll be interesting to see if they go all in this year because they have the division squared away. The Dodgers look like an almost unbeatable monster in the National League. I would make the case so far. But anything's possible in the playoffs, I think, if baseball has taught us anything. And, this could be the Nationals' year. We say it, and we say this every single year. And if they really do want to finally make them their mark in the playoffs, which they really never have since they've moved from Montreal, I think they could use one more deal before this deadline. The Dodgers, I really don't think have to do anything. Personally, I don't really see the point. I think they're complete, well-rounded. They have depth. All they need really is to be as healthy as possible in the playoffs, and I think they're fine.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between what they should do and what they're likely going to do. The teams like this have trouble sitting still. They feel the need to make their team as good as humanly possible, give themselves the best possible chance with all the assets that they have. And I kind of see why. I think the Dodgers, I can just see them making a really ill-fated attempt to get a right-handed starter that they really don't need, but they're going to feel like, we have too many lefties in our rotation. We need a right-hander to balance it out. They might spring for Verlander, which would be really disappointing, I think, especially if he's not an ace-level performer for the Dodgers. They're probably going to have to give quite a bit for him.
I don't think so. I don't think that they give up much for him.
I think you don't really understand how few options there are on the the market right now. Other than
The
Sonny
Dodgers
Gray.
are way too smart to overpay for 34-year-old Justin Verlander when they don't even need a starter. I really think you're underrating a front office which you could really make the case is the best in baseball without a doubt.
Well, I think overpaying at this point for a team like that, they have so much prospect depth, and they already have a very crowded field of
Verlander,
their major league squad. They might trade like one or two pretty decent prospects for Verlander along with some other pieces and eat up that money. I don't know.
He's not even arguably good enough to be in their rotation as of now.
Well, I think he'll be in the rotation. There's no question about that.
But you can make the case that he isn't good enough at this point in his career. Compared to, I would be, I'm willing to make a bet with you. I'd be shocked if will they trade for him? I really think it's very possible, if not likely, but a real deal where they really give up serious prospects for him, I think would be just idiotic. I really don't see, I would really be shocked. If they were the Boston Red Sox, I would tell you yes, because that's definitely Dave Dombrowski's strategy, is just to say, fuck the future, we're winning now. I don't really care how, but I don't really think the Dodgers have demonstrated that, and they already did overpay for Logan Forsythe, and considering the success they have with promoting their guys to the major leagues, I just don't see them doing that again. Now, will they trade maybe for another relief pitcher? Because you can never have too many relief pitchers that are effective. I would say definitely, but a really big blockbuster trade, I just don't see them pulling off. They really have that much prospect depth.
I'm going to go ahead and say in general,
system?
I think you overvalue prospects from a major league context, because prospects are good, but they are what they are. They don't pan out. They're
but
risky,
Verlander doesn't help their team.
Commodities.
He doesn't move the needle in any direction. If not, he only moves it back. If anything, he's a huge ego. He gets paid a ton of money, and he's not better at this moment in his career than anyone in their rotation.
Well, what is the Dodgers' full rotation? I'm sure I could find room for Justin Verlander in there if I really wanted to.
You don't even need him in the playoffs. You have Kershaw, Wood, and
Hill.
Hill. You don't even need him. I mean, would I rather trust Verlander than Wood or Hill in the playoffs? Probably, honestly, but it's not a move that they need. It's a luxury move.
Yep, and they have the luxury to do so. I think just in general, teams at this point that are really ready to make a push are okay with parting ways with some prospects here and there.
But what push does he give you? You have to explain that to me. I don't see.
The Dodgers really feel like they need a right-handed starter that can give them really good innings, especially down the stretch here in the postseason.
I really wish Ray was here for this conversation because
I think he'd have conflicting feelings about that as well. But we're spending a lot of time on teams that are really looking like they're in really good shape. And I think the more interesting teams to talk about are the ones that are fighting for it still. And a few teams that would fall into that would be, the Brewers, the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Braves, the Diamondbacks, and the Rockies. All these teams are really fighting for either their division or one of the two wild card spots. And the two teams that looked like they were the front runners, the Diamondbacks and the Rockies, all out of the West, I don't know what their plan. They have very interesting decisions to make going forward. I would say the Rockies do, especially. You touched on them a little bit earlier on, and how you don't really like their chances of maintaining this with the kind of rotation they have. And I kind of do want to correct you. It's not a young staff that doesn't strike me out. John Gray and Jeff Hoffman strike people out, but they're young. They're inexperienced.
I would make the case. I mean,
they're inexperienced. I think that's
slightly above average at striking people out. They're not great at. They aren't guys that I would say oh, that guy is the next Chris Sale. I mean, I really wouldn't describe them as potential 200K every season pitchers.
Well, in Coors, it's hard. You can't project anything there.
What does Coors to do with strikeouts?
Wait, what? The point is that the Rockies don't have a good makeup, and they don't have a lot of options to add to their rotation. I don't know what they could possibly add at this point. And I think the only difference between this year and last year is that their bullpen is significantly stronger than it was last year. So that's a good sign. That's their saving grace if they have any. But they've definitely got to fight for what they've got. The same with the Diamondbacks, who, Paul Goldschmidt has been the guy for them this year, and the team has played really well behind him. They've pitched much better than I think anybody expected. Zach Greinke looks like a full bounce back for the most part. They've got some other pitchers that have been pitching really well, like Zach Godley kind of came out of nowhere and started pitching out of his mind. I actually don't know much about how Taijuan Walker's been doing, but he's been part of that rotation too. Patrick Corbin's been back and kind of filling that void. The Diamondbacks, do you see them really going after anybody at this trade deadline?
Their bullpen isn't great, is it? I mean, they have arguably the best rotation in baseball this year, so there's no reason to upgrade there. The offense, I really like. I don't love it because I guess you can make the case after Lamb, Goldschmidt. There's no guy that just kind of is like, wow, like that guy scares me, though. I mean, Pollock can be that guy if he stays healthy the rest of the year going into the playoffs. But then again, with the offense, it's just pretty good, pretty well rounded. I'd probably say if they're like, yeah, exactly. I think almost any team you can make the case that's trying to make the playoffs. They could use bullpen depth. There's really no such thing as too many good relievers. But, I mean, they have, American citizen Fernando Rodney.
They've got Archie Bradley, who's been fantastic.
Bradley and Jorge De La Rosa, so a couple of, failed starters that have been made into effective relievers. JJ Hoover is a man. I mean,
he is a man.
It's not like
praise.
Their bullpen is atrocious. It's not like it's one that's like wow. Like it's not like the Nationals pre-Doolittle trade where it's like that. There's just no way they can do it. I mean, they don't really have a catching option that can do anything at the plate. So does only like 5 teams in the league have that.
Who's their catcher right now?
Jeff Mathis and Chris Iannetta and Herman all.
Oh, that's right. Chris Iannetta had like that 1 week stretch where he actually like hit the baseball and then kind of was like,
right.
That's enough for now.
I like this team, and they have a lot of guys on the DL who come back and give them some replenish them, like Tomas and Delgado and another De La Rosa and Ahmed.
Another De La Rosa. Throw him
Ruby
back in.
Yeah, so they have depth. What do you tell me? Do you think this is a team that really needs to make? I don't think they need to make a desperation move. I don't think they have much prospect depth. I could be wrong, but there's no one I can think of off the top of my head that it screamed out to me as a great Arizona Diamondbacks prospect at the moment. And this is a team where almost everyone is kind of in their prime. So, except for me, I guess the rotation isn't super old, but I think they would be smart to make maybe 1 or 2 bullpen moves, and then if there is a clear upgrade position player on the market, I would not blame them for going all in that guy because, this Diamondbacks team could make the NL championship game. I think they're that good. Yeah,
and I'm gonna throw this name out there that I think would be an interesting fit. Would be JD Martinez, who
I love it.
I really hope gets dealt at this deadline because he is a really, really valuable hitter to have. And he'd be an upgrade for most teams. And I think he'd fit really nicely there. Yeah, I mean, hits to all fields really well. Chase Field is obviously a really good hitter's park. I'd love to see what he can do there. And, I don't know if he's going to be a super expensive player just, asset wise at the trade deadline. So we'll see what happens there. I think the Diamondbacks would be a good fit at first glance. So I think we talked about the Brewers too a little bit. That NL Central is basically it really is kind of a bloodbath because the other two divisions in this league are locked up.
It's more like a shit bath, but yeah.
Wow, that's not holding anything back there. But the Brewers really have not gotten their fair credit for the most part. People kind of want to dismiss them still. And the Cubs are coming, and they might be, but the Brewers, have done really, really well this season, and I think their offense could even benefit a little bit more. Even like second base has been kind of a question mark all season. Eric Sogart's been holding down the fort for the most part, and VR
should have kept Scooter Gennett.
VR has not been great. Yeah, apparently Scooter was the answer. They could always trade for him back if they really wanted. So
very true.
I really am not sure what they're going to do. They have Travis Shaw at the. I think he's been playing third base for most of the season. That was an amazing pickup. He has not been getting enough credit there, but part of me feels like even adding another middle infielder to kind of throw in there, because Arcia is good and they want to give him playing time, but I don't know if he's the guy you want down the stretch. I could see them even going within their division trying to trade for a guy like Cozart. I think that would be a nice fit there, and then you can use Arcia, at either middle infield spot. Same with VR, you can mix and match. And I think their outfield right now, they've got a lot of internal depth at outfield. Even possibly trading for an outfielder would do the trick, because Ryan Braun's been a trade piece for the last 5 years of his career, you could even say. But now I
don't think they'll trade for an outfielder.
I don't think they will, but they could.
They have two top outfield prospects, so I'd be really
That's
surprised.
Right, but when you're a playoff team and you're going on the stretch, it's really hard to play prospects, especially when they're not, lighting it up necessarily. Like Brinson and Phillips are the two that you're referring to, I think.
Correct.
And they're really valuable pieces. I think Brett Phillips is going to be a really good player. And same with Brinson. Brinson could be just an absolute monster, but if you're trying to give them the time to break in right now, that might not work out so well. You could use another guy to bridge the gap for the most part.
I could see them trading for a Jonathan Scope maybe. I'm not.
That's another interesting middle infield piece. Yeah, I like that.
Not a super expensive fielder, but a guy who's having probably a career season. I don't know if he'll ever be this good again, to be honest, because he really was never this good of a hitter that I can ever think of and ever rated that highly. Who the Orioles are kind of gonna sounds like they're gonna sell, and they have the depth to trade for that guy without giving up anyone crucial, I feel like, for their future. And he probably still has, I believe, some team control left. I'm not positive, but he's 25 years old. So
yeah,
actually, that might be too expensive because I didn't realize he was only 25. So
yeah,
but a kind of guy like that.
Yeah, I think Scope is a very controllable piece for the Orioles. I think I might be wrong about that, but he could be.
Let's play it back.
The Orioles are sellers, so
a star. They don't need stars, but the guys on teams that are going nowhere. I think an interesting one to even think about would be like a Marcell Ozuna even.
I don't know if they'll spring for that necessarily.
Right. I think the rotation is the other thing that I think it's been very good, but I mean, can you really start Chase Anderson next to potentially against Max Scherzer or Kershaw in the playoffs as in game one?
You can. You just fuck it.
But it's a really fascinating qualm, because do they say we basically just have a free season here where we can just basically kind of let it play out and we'll go do as well as we and just let it roll over, or they can make a decision and say, what, we're good, we can make the playoffs, and we're gonna do everything we can to ensure that. I think that's a pretty tough decision to make.
I think. Sorry. I just want, before you move off the topic of starting pitching. I was
just gonna say they've done it before. They've traded for, the ownership has let them trade for Greinke and Sabathia, so the ownership definitely lets them go all in when they need to.
That's a good point. I think they are one of the front-running teams for Sonny Gray, and
I think it's definitely possible.
I think they make a lot of sense. They definitely have the prospect depth, and so do the Astros, and I think the Astros are the other front-runner at this point. Those are the two that I would look at, but the thing with the Brewers too is you're getting a guy who's changing from AL to NL, where he gets to face 8 hitters in a lineup essentially for a really short sample down the stretch here. I love when pitchers switch leagues because it's a fresh look for this this first part of the season, and even if the Brewers don't do what they want this season, and they have Gray, who will still be a nice piece to have. If he puts on a good showing the second half, he could be a trade commodity in the offseason as well. So, I mean, they're going to have to give up quite a bit. There's going to be a really good bidding war for Sonny Gray, I have a feeling. He's probably the best pitcher left, I would argue, on the trade market. Wouldn't you say so?
I'd say the best guy who there's just no way that I don't see him not getting traded is him. Yeah. I'd be shocked if he doesn't get traded this deadline. And he was, he hasn't been great the past 2 seasons, but he's a fairly young guy who was incredible in recent memory. And I would agree with you. Mm-hmm. I think the other move that they can make is just slot Josh Hader into the rotation. I'm waiting for that to happen.
I don't think they trust it at this point. I really think they will
Pretty
eventually.
Interesting.
They want to see more. They haven't seen enough. They haven't seen the kind of command.
I feel like they've seen enough Matt Garza, though. I mean, come on.
Well, I think we've all seen enough Matt Garza. So we've talked about the Cubs in this division too. The Cardinals are interesting. They are hovering around 500. They could definitely make a push. They are a really, resilient team historically. They have a lot going for them as an organization. They have inexplicable young players that are putting up really nice numbers. Like this year, it's Tommy Pham and Chase DeJong. I think that's how you say his name. That are just smacking the ball, and I can't tell you.
I think it's DeJong.
DeJong.
The rare Rudy correct pronunciation correction.
Paul the Dong. I think that's what they call him down in those.
I just know because in soccer, there's a lot of Yongs. And it's always pronounced Yong and spelled that way, so
insightful.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Anyway, the Cardinals look like they're a team that's interested in adding a young, controllable outfielder, and the Marlins have no short supply of that. So I can definitely see a scenario where Yelich or Ozuna ends up with the Cardinals, and that would very much help them on their push. Piscotty's on the DL right now. He's definitely not having the season that everybody hoped he would. I think Grichuk's also on the DL right now, after being back up in the majors for a very short amount of time. I think Ozuna would probably be the way to go here, just because that raw talent, I think, the Cardinals are really good at harnessing that kind of raw talent, and he's definitely shown it this season. And I think he'll have a lot of fun on that team and push them into that race. Yelich is obviously a really good all-around player. I can see him doing really well for the Cardinals, but I think Ozuna is the more dynamic player to go for at this point. Don't you think?
Yeah, Yelich feels like much more of a Cardinal player than Ozuna does in just terms of personality and style. Mm-hmm. I can't really remember the last blockbuster Cardinals trade deadline trade. Can you
trade deadline trade? That is interesting. They
don't really
trades.
They're never really that active around here. I feel like they don't even I just off the top of my head I can't really name the last time I can think of a big guy on Ozuna's level or even Yelich's level getting traded at the deadline to St. Louis. They're really in-house and free agency dominant, mm-hmm. Largely.
They didn't trade for. Did they trade for Beltran that year they won?
Ooh.
I don't remember what they did. They might have traded. They might have traded for Berkman actually.
I'm pretty sure it's a law.
I think the Cardinals got Berkman from the Yankees. Even.
No, he signed. I'm pretty sure.
Did he really? Okay. I don't know. That was a long time ago.
I'm pretty sure it's a law though that Carlos Beltran gets traded at every other trade deadline. So
every other year. Well, he's got a multi-year deal again, so.
The other interesting thing is about this team is just Matt Carpenter really hasn't been very good this year. And they trade away Matt Adams to kind of give more infield depth, or infield spots, and yet, I mean, he's having a better year than Carpenter. And then I think this team is just, it feels like it should be better. I don't know. Do you feel that way at all?
Yeah, I'm on board with Matt Carpenter. Matt Carpenter was arguably one of the best leadoff hitters in all of baseball last year, and I think they kind of screwed with that in what he was trying to do. I think he was.
If they have a good trade deadline, why can't they win this division?
They can. They definitely can, because there's nothing scary about the Brewers and Cubs right now. They have better records right now. They've been playing better baseball. The Cardinals really are not a sound fundamental team. Like, they don't play great defense at this point. They don't, they can swing it now. That's like the big thing they got doing. Their pitching has been okay at best. Carlos Martinez kind of hasn't really taken over as a dominant ace type. Wainwright's been better. Lance Lynn is coming off injury, has been up and down. It's a lot of cases like that, and Walker's been better, but it's not enough, it feels.
Leake's had a pretty good year considering how awful he was last year.
Who is that? Oh, Mike Leake. Yeah, Mike Leake is a great example of a guy who's had a really good year for that team. But
this team, it just feels like this team, like every week, like half the roster is doing really well, and then half the roster is doing really poorly, and then the other next week it switches. That's kind of
they're not the same.
They don't
kind
gel
of
together
team
very
from
well.
A couple years ago.
Not at all. Not even close.
Yeah. So there's always that to keep in mind. And we talked a lot about the Braves already. I don't know what pieces they would be trying to add. I don't think they go after a starter at the deadline. I don't think they even add a position player at the deadline. I think they kind of just hold down the fort for the most part. I don't know what they're going to do, because they could add I don't even know what they want to add. They have so many, overperforming veterans right now, that you can't really bump out of the way. So, they're in a tricky spot. Do you have any more thoughts on the Braves?
The Cardinals, they can do anything. I wouldn't really be surprised. Those teams could just move really in every direction possible, because they just have such a strange combination and blend of veterans and young guys and prime guys and money and cheap deals, and they're just in a tornado of decisions. And
a tornado of decisions.
That's a terrible metaphor.
Poetic.
But, hopefully they make better moves at the deadline than my metaphors are.
I hope so too, for their sake. Yeah. So that's about all we'll talk about the trade deadline. I do want to go through this little piece here before we end off the show, and I want to talk about defense, which has gotten no love this season for the most part. It's the year of the dong. I think I've decided to coin that term.
That needs context, but okay.
No, it doesn't need any context. This is the great part about it. But especially today is Monday as of this recording. There were some fantastic defensive plays made today, and I haven't seen a lot of love for it. I mean, it's really fun to watch, but it's just not quite as hype as it used to be. And I think, we don't think of these great players as great defenders kind of the same way as we used to. It's really, it is an integral part of the game that really can make or break a season for teams. And I think for the most part, defense has been getting better throughout the league. I think players for the most part are more athletic than they were in years past. But just getting your initial impression on some of your favorite defensive players, or guys that you would identify as the best defensive players. It's not something you think about very often, but give me your 2 cents on who are some of the better defenders in this game right now.
You know what? I think you talked about earlier before we started podcasting how good Mookie Betts is, and I think that's just a great guy to start off with, because he's fucking unbelievable, and he isn't as obviously good in baseball culture as guys like Anderson Simmons and Nolan Arenado are. Those guys just get so much love. It's all deserved because they're outstanding, but I don't think you hear as much about Betts, and I really feel like Betts is kind of like Mike Trout, honestly. He just does everything so well, but you don't really think of him as a top player necessarily at any one skill. But for a converted second baseman, he's an unbelievable right fielder, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, and his ultimate zone rating, which is one of the more commonly used advanced metrics, he is blowing away the rest of the competition in that. He's nearly double. He's like around 18.3 for the season, and the next highest is actually Odubel Herrera at 9.8. Odubel's an interesting guy too. He's a guy we think of as a bust. He just signed this big contract. He looks like a guy who is just not able to put together the same type of season he did last year after his great Rule 5 season. But he's putting in the defensive value. That's something you'll always get from him day in and day out, I guess. There's some other obvious guys. Ender Inciarte is amazing. Billy Hamilton is really good as well. Obviously, he's freaking the fastest man alive, it seems. Alex Gordon's still near the top of this list too, despite his age. Anthony Rendon is one guy that really kind of stands out because he is very close to the top of many WAR leaderboards. There's a couple different ways that WAR is measured, but he is among the league leaders in wins above replacement on a team that has probably like 2 or 3 guys you'd think of having higher wins above replacement than him on his own team. But his defensive ability has really just stood up above the rest of his teammates and put him in a spot where he's really leading the pack. And the bat obviously has been insanely hot ever since like the start of May. So do you have any other thoughts on Anthony, not an all-star, Rendon?
Probably a guy who's always just been perennially underrated because he's had some injuries and ups and downs, and I just don't think people remember that he was an unbelievably highly touted prospect that probably never became the superstar that people expected, but you really can't ask for much more for a middle infielder / third baseman than him.
Yeah, he was one of the best college bats
right.
of his time, and he had that season really early on where he hit like 20 homers, scored over 100 runs for that team. It looked like it was going to be smooth sailing for him, faced some injuries, and now he's back full force. It's really nice to see that. I'm kind of just running through this list here. I think it's worth noting that like defense too, the way it's identified in these like advanced metrics, they have positional adjustment, so it really undervalues positions like first base and catcher, which are much more important than I think the metrics give credit for, and I think that shows up in WAR leaderboards as well. But there's so many athletic outfielders. Like give me a few names just off the top of your head that pop out as like really good defensive players, regardless of anything.
I feel like everyone accepts and just acknowledges that Kevin Pillar, Kevin Kiermaier, Jason Hayward, Byron Buxton are all really, really good defensive outfielders that, regardless of what they do at the plate, because all of them are various degrees of of like average to below average, they're so good in the outfield that it doesn't really matter because they're just fucking outstanding at defense. I think Paul Goldschmidt is someone who's a really good first baseman that people don't really talk about because people don't really think you can be that good at first base defensively, and it can only add so much value, which I think is true. But the thing is, regardless of what position it is, if you're really fucking good at defense, it's really fucking helpful, and he's an MVP level bat alone. So the fact that he's so good at defense is underrated. I mean, it matters. I think people don't really acknowledge how much it can still matter to have a really good first baseman, because having a really bad one who can't pick balls, who has no range, really limits your defense in more ways than I think people realize.
Yes, the Ryan Howard conundrum.
Right, and I think there's just 2 other guys, because I'm just looking at ESPN's kind of defensive stats that stood out to me, or 3 actually. One is quickly Justin Upton, who ESPN rates really high, even though he has a terrible defensive reputation. So I think that's pretty interesting. Um, I think defensive stats are kind of all a little bit subjective and hard to really
Yeah.
quantify. But I just thought
He has
really
11 defensive runs saved this season for reasons that are beyond my understanding entirely, but he's got the same number as Alex Gordon and Jose Iglesias.
Okay, so those your numbers support what I see too.
Yeah, his UZR is considerably lower than those guys, but I think just this season he's been catching the ball better than he ever has, I guess.
And the other two guys who just stood out to me were Jed Jarko, who's a very good bat and has been rated as an above-average bat for an infielder for a while, even though he's been inconsistent. But I never knew that he was this good of a defender. To be honest, I've been following him for a while since the Padres called him up as, he's supposed to be a really good infield second baseman for them, the next Kinsler type guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he never really turned into that until maybe now, but I never knew he had this good of a glove. And then Addison Russell is one of the most disappointing offensive players I've seen since Jason Hayward, who I named earlier. But his glove is outstanding. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think, people really dismiss the value that defense adds because, let's be honest, you could scrap an entire major league team, pull up all minor leaguers, and you could field a really good defensive team still. Like, defense is really replaceable, and it's really hard to fill out a lineup sheet with guys that can really hit against major league pitching at a high level. But, a lot of these guys that are struggling with the bat that we give a lot of criticism are really putting in good numbers defensively. You mentioned Russell. Jose Iglesias is another guy I think a lot of people forget about in general. He's got a really good glove still. That part has never changed. He's a wizard with that thing. I remember when he's still probably, I think the best play I've ever seen was still that play he made where he charged barehand and jumped like an all-in-one motion. Man, it gives me goosebumps even to this day. Hayward's kind of the poster child for that. Wins above replacement without hitting at all, basically. I think you mentioned Goldschmidt and first baseman. I think Freddie Freeman is a really good defensive first baseman too. Brandon Belt is actually the highest rated defensive first baseman among most of these metrics, defensive runs saved in UZR anyway. So, I think the same can be said for a lot of players that having really, what you would consider down years, and you can find some light in the darkness with how good these guys' gloves have been. It really is something to watch. Byron Buxton, bust prospect. That is basically what he's been deemed at this point, and he's one of the best defenders in all of baseball. That goes into so much of his prospect rating. A lot of his scouting, I guess, ratings that are given to him. Obviously, that part is come to fruition, but everybody just wishes he'd swing the bat more. I think this is that was an interesting little thing we did here to look at the defensive side of the game that doesn't get enough love, in my opinion.
Who do you think is the most overrated defender in baseball before we
most overrated defender?
Yeah. And maybe most underrated too, if you have off the top of your head, if you have someone off the top of your head for that question as well.
I'm trying to think of somebody who just is notorious for robbing home runs.
Derek Jeter is notoriously the most overrated defensive player of all time, I would say.
Yeah.
As much as I fucking love him, he's by far my favorite athlete ever. But I think it's almost a joke at this point how mainstream, just not even baseball culture, but just culture, because of his highlights, thought of him as such a great defensive player. But it wasn't until I really became a hardcore, diehard baseball fan and really started doing my homework that I learned that he actually was terrible for like half his career.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first ones that comes to my mind is Josh Donaldson, who you think of making some insanely athletic plays, but he's not supported. No numbers really support his defensive prowess. He's a guy that, don't get me wrong, takes incredible pride in his defense. I have no doubt. and is really athletic, makes some really great plays, but I think he's probably pretty overrated, especially when he was on Oakland. I think he was really overrated there. I don't know. Speaking of Oakland, their Matt Chapman, who hit 2 homers off Corey Kluber over the weekend, he's supposed to be one of the best defensive prospects that came up, and I love watching infield defense in particular. That might just be me because I'm an infielder, and I think some of those guys are just unbelievable, and that's the part that gets me most excited personally. But I'm really excited to watch that guy play. Just in today's game alone, Gene Segura basically won the game with his glove for the Mariners against the Astros. It was a really good game, went into the 10th inning, and in a tie game, runner on second, nobody out, the first out of that inning, Segura makes a diving stop going to his right. The ball, Josh Reddick jumped over the ball running to third base. Segura dives and throws, falling away from first base off of one knee, and throws it across his body and gets the out at first. It was unbelievable. The very next play, gets a ball right back to him and throws out the runner at home. And then the last play of the inning, I think the Astros put more base runners on, and he makes a backhand play in the hole and gets the runner at second base. That stuff is just as entertaining as any home run that I've ever seen. So I just want to throw that out there. I think we should talk about defense more. Maybe, I don't know.
Judge had an incredible throw today as well.
Aaron Judge he had a cannon today. Jackie Bradley Jr. robbed Aaron Judge over the weekend. He is another guy that definitely needs to be in that conversation for best defender in the game. Man, there's plenty of good defense to go around in today's game for sure. So that is going to do it for our podcast today. Thank you everybody for joining us. As always, we very much appreciate any feedback you have. You can tweet us at WPB_podcast. Please check out our website as well. We have some articles being uploaded there that we are writing ourselves. Not to put you on the spot, but do you have anything that you've written recently or writing that you want people to check out?
I do have a AL East article in the makings that is not published yet, but I am working on.
All right, sounds great.
Be ready for that.
Yeah, I'm turning out some fantasy baseball articles if that's what you're into as well. So all that is on our website. The link for that will be below. It's got all our podcasts and everything else there as well. Yeah, so that is all. Thank you again for joining, everybody. As always, Rudy.
Peace.